Greg, how you doing?
Hey, Larry.
Hello.
Hello.
What day for a thing is it? Wasn't too bad. No, it didn't rain. Oh, we're out, no. Sorry.
You Johnny, you know, good. Hey, Larry.
This, do you need help in this? I already, got one out. But I get it. Okay. Three minutes ones. Thank you for sending those out, though.
Give it to you. It's from our first bit, my documents.
Oh, okay.
I can bring it tomorrow.
Oh, that's fine.
It's big as stamps. It's for the project going pen pal.
Yeah.
Good. Good job.
Ask for much more. So.
Right on time. Okay, it is 5:32. And we have a quorum of all members present, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. First order of business would be approval of minutes from last meeting.
Are there any changes to the draft? Not clear?
She sent out changes to the draft, right? I mean,
No changes.
Because what I got this morning was a
Okay.
draft on it. Is there any changes to this?
No changes.
Motion to accept the minutes as
motion-
email, made motion to accept. Any seconds?
Second.
Any discussion?
Minutes
All in
accepted.
favor?
All in favor,
Aye.
say aye. I didn't receive anything with a draft on it.
Yeah, mine says draft.
I see.
The one I sent you didn't say draft? weird. It was a group message. I saw it.
So I think if we're all here, even though we are slated to hear subrecipient presentations at 5:40, community development rehabilitation program. If you're ready to go, you'll have roughly 5 minutes to give the presentation. You've already submitted your application. We've had a chance to review it, so now's the time to just give us a verbal presentation, and then any questions, people?
Would you still kind of pass these along? These are just some handouts that'll help illustrate some of the points and maybe clarify some of the questions that may come up. To the committee, anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Wayne Sharkey, and I've been employed with the city for about 22 years. I work for the Community Development Center, and primarily I run the housing rehab program and the lead paint hazard control program. In different capacities over the last several years. So the property rehabilitation program, as some of you might be familiar with it, some of you might not. It's a staple program within CDBG that essentially addresses some of the key points of our annual and 5-year plan that deal with housing instability, and some of the most at-risk properties in the community. Right now, the program exists as a 0% interest loan program for housing that is eligible based on HUD income guidelines to both investor owners and owner occupants within the community. There are 3 structures in which loans are available. There's an owner occupied category, which is up to 2 units, with, of course, the caveat being that the main recipient is a occupant of the property. Up to 35,000 for 2 units, 30,000 for a single unit structure. And that's a 20-year payback at 0% interest. Money can be used for really anything that is energy related, safety related. We do a lot of heating systems, high efficiency heating systems. We do a lot of roofing. We do a lot of structural issues, electrical services. We also elements of ADA compliance for the American Disabilities Act, doorways, ramps, things like that for access to a property. The second variation is owner elderly, which is a deferred 30-year loan. And the reason we do this is because we get a lot of elderly people, fixed incomes, they need a heating system, $15,000. Sometimes that will be the difference between them actually staying in their property or not being able to stay in their property. So they can come to us, they meet the qualifications, we can get them the heating system or the roof. And the money gets paid back at sale or transfer of the property, or at the 30-year payback, which means that it's a little easier on them when they come through because they don't have to, come up with payments or anything like that. And most of the time they can't. Most of our properties are not eligible for traditional loans. So we're kind of like the last stop for them to be able to get assistance to fix their properties. The third variation in the loans that we allow is for investor owner. It's a little bit less money at 20,000 per unit, and the payback is a little different because we're dealing with an investor clientele that is paid back over a 7-year period at 0% interest. Still very forgiving terms. The eligibility is still based on their tenant's income, so they still have to meet the income requirement for their tenants set by the federal government. But it provides a good incentive for investor owners to basically get their properties up to date and safe and code compliant. So those are the 3 main categories in which loans are allowed and made available to the public. Some of the other things that we use in coordination with the funding is we use that as the rehab money as a match to our application to a lead grant. We are currently finishing a $2.9 million lead grant that is providing both healthy homes funding and direct lead hazard control funds to correct lead paint hazards in properties throughout the community. Norwich has about 80% of its housing population built before 78, which is a target for lead. So we still have very prevalent for lead needs within the community. With that program also comes additional job training, essential blood testing, education for the community and things like that are done through our offices as well. Couple of things to point out just for our recent accomplishments. Last fiscal year, we spent just over about $400,000 just on the rehab side. Half of that was return of loan, because we are seeing over the last couple of years, while we get normal 0% interest payments every month, we also get paybacks. Somebody will sell the property, a big chunk of money will come due to us, and we were able to put that back into the community right away. So we put last year about $200,000 in new program money and $200,000, a little bit more than that, in return of loan back into the community into new loans. Those are the nuts and bolts of the program. I can answer any questions that you have at this, at this point, specifics and so forth.
Was there any unused portion of last year's allocation?
Sandra,
What
did
was
we
that?
have any unused portion of last year's allocation? Or,
I can tell you that right now.
yeah, we could get that information.
Yeah, we can get back to you.
Generally speaking, there's always a somewhat balance that's constantly going in and out. It's hard to track sometimes because we, as part of the program guidelines, have to use, so say we get a payoff on it, and we get a money paid back. Program guidelines require we spend that next. So our spending is just kind of jumping from one foot to the other, to new spending to old spending. So we could be down 1 month on new spending and then up the next month based on what comes in. So we try to match that up, and be as reactionary as we can when the new funding is paid back.
Yeah.
I do not have any questions.
That's okay.
How do you have a backlog of applicants looking for assistance? How often does one come in for assistance? I did read, the construction timeline.
Yeah.
But there's no indication, and how many people do you serve in a general year?
Oh, great. So to start off with, for instance, last year, it was an average of 15 individual properties totaling about 25 individual housing units on the rehab side. Some are combined with our lead grant, and so but there are also some that are on our lead side only. So that number in total units is a little higher. But on the rehab side alone, that's about the average we do is about 15 to 20 properties with the makeup of how many units can go up to 25 or 30 units on any given year. In terms of individual properties, so if a property comes through and it's eligible for, say, a roof, and they come through and they go through the program, we'll do an inspection, see what the property needs in terms of minimal code requirements and safety. That property is only eligible to come in once per loan period and once per activity. So I'm not sure if that's what you were alluding to, as to how many times they can come through or what activities.
No, actually that wasn't, but that drags up another question. So a loan period is every year?
No, so for instance, depending on the qualification, say a single family structure comes through, that's a 0% interest loan over 20 years.
Okay,
So in order to come back through the program, that
they
same,
have to 20 years later.
it would have, or the loan would have to be paid off, and it couldn't be for the same activity. So say you get a roof, you couldn't come back through to get another roof. Now, say your heating system went and it was 20 years later, or you paid off your loan, you could come back through, and if you met the qualifications, potentially get that heating system or whatever the other item was. We don't tend to get a lot of repeat business. It's not generally the program, either by happenstance or just the way, I mean, somebody takes a 20-year loan out, even at 0% interest, these are individuals that are on very low income. We just don't see that. We don't see it very often.
So is there a backlog of loan applicants?
Not a there's consistent. So in other words, any given time, for instance, our intake person is working on applications as we put them into the field. So there's never a lull. There's always something ready to go. But what really will,
So you don't have a waiting list per se?
we do, so the waiting list as per se is like if there's 5, 6 applications in the pipeline. It may take, by the time we get all the documents, 2 to 3 months before we get those, so there's always a backlog of applications we're working on to get approved. Part of the issue with that kind of situation is an application rarely will come into us complete, where we can say, this is approved. Usually we have our outreach specialist, working with tenants to get income documents. That's the biggest, hardest thing to do, is to qualify these properties, and the biggest issue is income. We have to prove income. And that's the hardest thing with tenants. A lot of times they don't want to give the information. So there's some legwork that takes place. There are applications that are constantly coming in and hitting the review. If that, you want to call that a wait list, I guess it would be a wait list because they're not getting immediately coming through. So the ones that come through, hit the pipeline, we process them, get them into the field. Generally, an application hits us, it probably on average, you're probably talking 3 weeks to get it approved. Then we start the inspection process. Depending on what it needs, we can turn an application that's approved into a project in a bidding process. Probably 60 days altogether to the field.
That's actually better than the bank.
It is better than that.
So on investor owner, why isn't the owner's income? And I understand
sure.
you're serving
Sure.
a low income community of tenants.
Sure.
But, if you looked at, the cost of a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in Norwich,
Mhm.
it's pretty high.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so, my question is owners maybe getting more in return than their expenditures?
Well, no and yes. So for instance, to answer the question is that the federal government sets the terms of what's eligible and what's not for the housing program. So they've made the determination that it's not the landlord's income, it's the tenants. With that, however, the landlord has to stipulate the certain requirements in terms of he can't rent above the fair market rate. He can't raise the rent for a period of 2 years after the work is done. So the idea from the federal government side is the benefit is to the income of to the individual that's renting the property. So are the tenants, is the landlord getting a sweet deal? Sure, I guess, yeah.
But part of it is return to the tenant who has certain protections over rent.
Exactly. I think there's also an unintended, well, maybe it is intended, idea that if you provide these incentives to certain landlords, they will take that step. For instance, so the payback on the landlords also is a little bit different, even though it's still 0% interest, it's over a shorter period of time. So it's a little bit more, the idea being that, they are getting an incentive above what the average person would get. The benefit then, again, it overwhelmingly is to the tenant who is the income strapped individual they're targeting.
Sure.
So
You can't afford to necessarily purchase a house and then go ahead and do it, so.
sure.
it's within their environment that
No, I,
support.
but
And
it
if
was a
it's a
question.
federal,
No, it's a valid
and
question.
I like the answer.
It's a valid question, and it's one that this committee over the years for this program has been in existence for a long time. The program's also meant to change with the economy, change with the housing stock, community, and it has over the years. Going back 10 years, these programs were completely grant funded. So there was no payback to the program. That had to change with the fact that our funding was shrinking and there wouldn't be so there's always room for improvement and always room to look at it from another angle. But I think overall, we hit our benchmarks in terms of the goals within the city's 5-year plan and providing some relief for some of the most stressed properties. We don't deal with a property out there that's not usually in pretty bad condition. So that's kind of where it is right now. Is there any other questions I can answer?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Norwich Housing Authority, yeah.
Hello, they don't know me, my name is John. I'm from Modern actually choose one and so.
Yeah.
So. First of all, as I always start off when I come here, I just want to thank the board and we love the previous support. You guys have been great to us throughout the years to help us maintain a much needed affordable housing as far as helping the city. So, and family units. Last few years, we've done quite a bit of work. We've done the heat system, which would splits, which saved our tenants quite a bit of money, 30% on their heat bills, and new roofs at Rosewood Manor, which was much needed. And last year, you awarded us another $200,000 to do the exterior renovations, phase 1. And it's already bid out, and so he's already going to start. What that entails is doing the fascia of the buildings. All the painted areas are going to be, some of it's not deteriorating. Paint, you just can't bring more paint on. We're going to change all the wood, either AZAC or wrapping afterwards. There's some vertical vinyl siding with texture on the left underneath that's deteriorating. And over the years, and we just have to stop doing other issues for your brain and stuff. So it's 110 units, this exterior renovation. We're also going to include LED lighting for each tenant, which will definitely help in the lighting bill. And security, help security, which particular property. Yeah, they are low income, very low income and disabled. So I believe this project is something that coincides with the comp plan, but and Norwich compensation plan. So I think to keep these properties viable. Now, we do need help. We do spend our own money for plans, specs, and some of the stuff over the phone. So any time and material that we might need stuff, we take care of that over the phone. But I think in this environment with the way the rents are and the need, we have wait lists to these properties. It just has to be sustainable. To keep them for the foreseeable future. And we do get other grant projects. But we still on this, I stayed on this particular property because it is one of our bigger developments. And the state grants tend to go a little bit smaller problems, but we were able to get I think it's in the application, 2 or 3 of them. And a lot of it has to do with your support, community development support. That's why.
Sure, you mentioned local support and local
Yes.
buy-in,
Yes.
and
yes.
that's
They-
one of the
they love-
prerequisites, sort of.
Right, they love that stuff, and,
So what's your next project?
well, we might do a little more security cameras. Stuff like that, but we haven't got the foot.
Not $200,000 worth. right?
No,
Okay, good.
no, but, like I said, we did, I don't know if I told you, we're applying to finish it off with the other 200,000, so. It'll complement all the work we've done to that. It's starting to look really good. It's a nice complex, all new roofs, all new gutters. Once we get everything all the trim work, all the paint, all the siding, done.
And this is the final building.
This is the final. And I concentrated on this building only because the grants we applied for was way too much.
Yeah.
6, 7 years ago, we did apply for this grant and it was way too much money. It was simple. So that's why I've been piecemealing it. That's really. So that's where we are. Any questions?
Any questions?
And we do have a timeline, which we always meet, which is the end of June.
I guess that would be my one question is, looking at the notes, you are basically saying that you have a project completion date of around June 30th, 2025.
No, with that one, yes. Yeah. That's the timeline for community development.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be.
And you haven't had any issues meeting timelines in the past and.
No, that's why good things out the bit early.
Yeah.
Get started. Like I said, the first half of this project is supposed to start at 2.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we'll definitely be well in time.
Our funding doesn't come to you until the latter half of this year anyway.
Correct.
So you're always, and you can do your work during winter,
Winter into
this kind of work.
right, exactly. But this particular funding won't come till
Till the following,
Wow.
this winter
correct
or
next winter.
24 winter.
I know, we're already talking about 25.
I know.
and it's-
Yeah.
No, I know. Well,
Wonderful. Thank
any
you.
other questions? Well, thank you again for all your
Really
support.
appreciate you coming and being here.
Thank
Yes,
you.
John. Thank you, guys.
You do. Please, bonus. Outflow sidewalks.
Hi everyone, I'm John Gorman from Norwich Public Works. And just here to talk about the tap fill with satellite revitalization. So our main area of focus is South B Street between South Second Ave and South Fifth Ave tap fill. As well as 4 ramps on South A Street at the intersections of South Third Avenue and South Fourth Avenue. The condition of these sidewalks and ramps is very poor. You can see that there's a bunch of pictures attached to South A and South B, or South A and B. And most of the spots, the sidewalk is either non-existent or the ramp itself is overgrown with grass and a major trip hazard to anybody living in the area or just walking on it in general. The the main focus is just improving the area's walkability for all of the residents, just with the post office down at the end of the street on South B Street and the Sacred Heart Church and School, as well as Wequanac Arts and Science Magnet School. And as well, if anything, if you needed future developments for the old mill down at the end on Norwich Ave. Yeah. As for the estimate, the that 386,000 was put together using the bid prices from last year's Prospect Street prices and from other prices that we've gotten from contractors for
We
other.
appreciate you put that in there this year.
Yeah, and the yeah. Yeah, the prices aren't the yeah, they're the and we're representing the prices. I don't imagine that, I imagine they're probably going to be higher next, when we put this out to bid next year, and we probably aim to put it out to bid in February or early March at the latest. So that way we had problems last time with the contractor getting the granite curb, which made us we made it in, spend all the money beforehand, but it was concerning just because the contractor granite curb took like 2 months for him to find any, and
I noticed in your application that you said that there's a possibility of reusing viable granite curbing. Is that
Yeah,
gonna be?
if there's any curbing that's salvageable, sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. If there's any that's good, then we could try, we can
Is there-
try to, but
Granite curbing there now?
there is, in some spots there is, not all of them have it. Some of it does, most of it's not great. Some of it
If
might.
there is, how many years ago was that sidewalk done?
I couldn't tell you how long ago that was done. It would have been a long time ago still, even the granite curb. I mean, they've been doing granite curb for a while, but sometimes they grade, and sometimes even the newer ones, it just degrades faster in some areas.
How are your projects determined?
What do you mean?
In other words, is there any criteria?
Uh,
You just like, I mean, because there's a lot of streets in Norwich. A lot of streets in Norwich that meet the criteria of, the HUD criteria of funding. And a lot of these streets are, these sidewalks are in poor shape.
Yeah.
So how do you determine that South B Street is your priority?
For this, it was mainly just because of how much of it is in bad condition. We like to focus on the larger the stretch, the better.
Yeah.
Because then the contractor does it. It's just easier to do. If
Well,
you have to
yeah.
replace this one section, then this one
It's
section, that one
the
section.
difference
there.
between buying an apple or a bush.
Yeah, if the contractor sees, oh, I have to replace 3 long sections. It's a lot easier for me than replacing 20 10-foot sections or whatever. It's just. Yeah. Yeah.
So last year with the $12,000, that's what you got last year?
Yes,
So what did you get done with that? Because last year you did the same thing with us. You said you told us all tackle. There was no other. I had this talk with you last year about what he just brought up. About other sections of Norwich, and it was all tackle, and this year again, it's all tackle. So my question to you is, it would have been nice. Is the $12,000 that you got, instead of coming in here with pictures of all these cracked sidewalks, maybe you should have brought in some pictures of the sidewalks that got repaired with the $12,000.
we didn't.
That would have been nice.
$12,000.
Huh?
They didn't do anything.
It wasn't enough to do anything.
What'd you do? Where's the money?
We didn't accept it.
Huh? You didn't accept the money?
No, because we can do anything with $12,000.
So
So that got returned and then pushed to future projects.
that's not in here, in this thing?
It's probably part of the.
I mean, it just says awarded, it says awarded 12,000. It
Yeah.
doesn't say it was returned or anything, so
Sure.
That was true. I would include that in there. If that's how much was awarded, so I included that it was 12,000 awarded, but we didn't. No, sorry.
You can't do anything with 12,000, even if it's, you don't subcontract it, you just.
It would
guys
be-
just do something yourself?
We don't require the sidewalks in-house. We always we get a contractor to do them.
Yeah, they don't.
And it's 12,000 is just,
And did you
it
go,
doesn't
I asked you
coordinate.
another question, did you go to the city for the, in July for, any money for them?
For these,
I
yeah,
asked-
we,
Yeah,
well, if we got money, we could have substituted, not substituted,
so you didn't go,
assisted it
you
and gotten
didn't-
money like we did with Prospect Street.
Yeah.
If we asked for, I don't remember exactly how much off the top of my head, but it was like
you
similar
didn't get
amount.
no funding from them the last year then, from the city.
No, not for these.
Okay,
We have a sidewalk program, but that's a different thing. The owner signs up for that, they pay half, and then we pay the other half.
So this is the project you had last year that we didn't fund?
It's more focused, it's just South B and those 4 ramps in South A, and just more.
And
narrowing
Prospect
it all
Street,
down.
did we fund much of Prospect Street?
It
'Cause that
was, I think it was around a similar amount of money, 300, but it was awarded like 180, and we
Yeah,
did,
we
back that up.
well, just to. We have 1.35 in request,
Yeah.
and we have 800,000
We should
to dole out.
put that in
So we're gonna all, and the lion's share comes from non-public, which is you,
Know what I mean?
and the people that were here tonight. And so
I'll just bring them.
we have to decide where, how we would, since we didn't give you any money last year, we probably will give you something this year. But it won't be 386,000. I can assure you that it won't.
No, I understand. Like I said, if we don't get the 380,000, we definitely weren't expecting to, to be honest. Is more of to demonstrate. That's how much it's going to cost to do this.
But at least you have, which was my largest pitch last year, was. You have to tell us what what things cost. You have to tell us, I love this, the length of the sidewalk, the width of the sidewalk for the specific property. So that we know what we're doing. I still have a complaint that, if there was a sidewalk in front of my house and it deteriorated, you guys wouldn't spend a dime on it. You'd force me into doing it, just because of where I live. And which of these particular properties is owner occupied? Are they rental units? Are they, is there somebody profiting off of this?
Approximately half of them are owned by the owner, the other half are totally rentals. But.
Yeah, I get it, but it's always been a complaint of mine that, that the benefit that these folks get, which is understandable, and it's a low income area.
Conversation about that last year, right?
What's that?
And we did have a long conversation about that last year.
Yeah. And I won't keep this a long conversation.
Okay.
It's,
It's duly noted. 2 years in.
but I restate what I said last year.
Basically, I mean, one way to look at it is that, and we'll discuss this more in deliberations. I mean, we've fair points bringing up. But basically, who traverses these streets? It's not so much, the people that actually live right there on that sidewalk. If you're looking at a playground where you're looking at a lot of kids that are consistently going back and forth, or if there's elderly that need to get from point A to point B and they need to use that road, doesn't matter if they live on it or not. If it's assisting the general sort of population, but we can get into that more in deliberations.
Yeah.
But fair points you're bringing up. With all that, I guess I just have one question, which is basically, I mean, obviously I understand that, you didn't accept the 12,000 and change that you were awarded last year. And we absolutely appreciate, the more clarifications, the scope of work, improved budget and whatnot that you have provided. I know that you're asking 386. What is, just to give us a kind of reference, what would be a budget that you could work with. I'm not trying to whittle you down
I was
much,
wondering, that's a
but
good question though, John. Great, what would be
You're just
rejected?
asking you to
Yeah.
sharpen
Yeah,
your pencil.
right,
What would be
like,
rejected?
I mean, if,
Oh.
for example, and I'm not, and please don't think that this is what we're gonna do. But just to give a fair aspect of it, if we awarded you, for example, 150,000, something like that, is that enough to go ahead and selectively really focus on one block of this, for example, and get it done?
Yeah, like with it, yeah, I mean, 150,000, yeah, we would, I think you said in the application, we would probably do something like that, we would supplement our additional funds to try to make it, well, easier for us to get bigger sections done. And even then,
Because it's cheaper to do larger sections at once.
yeah, it's cheaper and easier for the contractor and it's just better. But if I had less money, it would be, I would still try to focus on getting as many ramps done as possible. Just because the ramps are they're in the worst condition by far.
And if I look at your,
Yeah.
at your sheet here, it's 31.5 for ramps.
For,
Driveway ramps?
Oh,
Is that
no,
what we're talking about? Or
no,
is it
sorry, handicap ramps, the handicap ramps are part of the sidewalk.
Another
there-
question.
Just, that kind of sucks, yeah, go ahead.
Another question, too, and I noticed with some of the photos that, you have this green strip, which, it was in the sidewalk. Which calls to mind, part of community development, block grant funding, one of the best practices called out. Would be community engagement in terms of how much have you reached out to the actual community for their involvement? Because the reason why I brought up the green strip is because there are certain services, certain neighborhood services that are provided in areas provided from departments in various cities. I know that DEP, state agency, actually has a service of specifically planting trees and trees for city streets, so that you're not gonna undermine sewage, that you're not gonna, they're gonna do well. I mean, they've obviously been, an arborist who's approved this type of tree for, this city street, whatnot. And so I'm wondering what kind of community engagement you've done, because if you're going ahead and you're laying down sidewalks and doing that, that's a tremendous amount of construction work, and that would be obviously the opportune time to engage the residents to see if, maybe they want to get involved and plant some trees, and so then, afford tree wells in your plans as well, and do that. And I know that, I know you have a job to do and everything like that, but at the same time, this is also another way to boost the resiliency of a neighborhood itself, and also really just the aesthetic appeal for it. I mean, if you open up any novel and when they say, quiet tree lined street, it's a nice neighborhood. Right? As opposed to, barren. And so this would be a way to also boost sort of civic engagement. And once people really start to assume ownership of their area, then living starts to improve for everybody around them. So it can start with little things like this. So then back to my question with, you got that grass strip right there, which is kind of, people walking over it, not even really looking at it. But I mean, has there been any sort of reach out or engagement with
So,
regards to that?
For the grass strip,
And I don't know if you specifically can pull the trigger on that or whatever, but.
yeah, so the unfortunate reality is those strips too small really to put any kind of tree. You could put a tree on the other side,
I know, it's a
But-
tiny strip.
yeah, but it would cost, the tree well's like $2,000 per tree well, something like that. And that's not even including it's like sometimes including the tree, sometimes not including the tree. So they're just another big expense. And if we would get a limited budget.
They could have planted a lot of trees with that 12 grand.
Good.
I know that DEP obviously offers funding to go along with, and we like to see it as much kind of sort of collateral and tie in with other programs as well too. And I'm just throwing out the idea of community engagement. When you see $2,000 for a tree well, and that's a lot of money, but
Yeah, I think I, growing up in that culture of the neighborhood, I think it goes both ways, right? Sometimes when the city shows some investment in the community, civic engagement comes back, right? It's a two-way road.
100%.
I think it can be fostered when it can be fostered and so, yeah, I think it's a thing to explore, but I do think it's a two-way road.
I'm not saying that everybody, that all the neighborhoods there, you know, want lots of trees, but just that reach out alone to see if they'd be maybe interested. I mean, that goes on to, you know, bigger things like community gardens where, you know, instead of blight, all of a sudden, you know, you're looking at a community lifting up an area and then it becomes a coveted place. And this is just better for everybody engaged that you know, lives there. So it just starts with little things. So I guess I would just encourage, you know, some form of community engagement with that.
Yeah, I did speak to some residents when I was out measuring, but I didn't mention anything about putting new trees in or anything, so we don't usually like to put new trees in if there weren't there any already. It's just more of a, for public works too, it's a hassle, especially like the trees then shed their leaves onto the sidewalk. Which can make trip hazards, and then they go into the road, which our guys have to clean up. We don't like to put trees in, also the other thing is if the owner wants to put trees in on their side of the property, which is where these trees would have to go, because they can't do anything in the 1 foot little buffer. So the owner can, it's totally acceptable as it for the owner to do, I guess, but I can look into it and see if the next application, if there's any interest in it, but. Yeah, sometimes when I speak to owners, they also don't like the trees. That's not solution. Because that's the other part too, according to city ordinances, the owner's responsible for maintenance and liability if anything goes wrong on the sidewalk, so. Some people don't like have to brush up their leaves off their sidewalk. They don't like shovel it all the time.
Very poor area.
I'd like to go back to what you said in the beginning about the 12,000 you were awarded last year. I mean, you said you didn't accept it. It's still out there. I'm Craig Clement, the new CD director, community development director. So, you know, I mean, that money is still there. No one's reprogrammed it in any sense. So you still have $12,000 out there.
Yeah.
So if the committee wants to give you more money, they could factor in that 12,000 plus whatever they want to give you this year, and then you can do this project, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't aware that I thought the 12,000 was rejected. I don't know, that's Pat on.
Well, I mean, was it? I mean, it wasn't accepted by the city council that they gave. I thought I saw something that said.
I'm not so sure exactly what happened, but I was told that those $12,000 were now to be used. We will have to recapture. But I don't know the extent of what the discussion was with the city council.
Okay. Well, I just need to know that because I thought maybe they were doing some kind of design work with it or something
Yeah,
like
we
that.
do all the design in-house, I do it.
Right, I was thinking about the 12,000. Maybe that was just going to be design work for you, and then but so it's nothing. It's not there. I mean,
No, we
it's still in our CDBG.
But still, we haven't do the recaptures, so technically we still have them. I think it's somewhat the communication was that it wasn't enough to do anything with them. That's why they were not, I don't know, as much as accepting it, but they couldn't do anything with it.
So really, whatever the committee gives you for this year, plus state bond funds, is that what you're looking at, or?
We use
funds?
we have our bond.
Oh, all right. Just to make sure when they do deliberations next week, they're talking about a figure right now, and that 12,000 is off the table completely. Okay.
Any further questions?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My question, with the $12,000.
Yeah, I mean, there's always money in
I would like-
CDBG that, you know, the problem is, you know, if people like, you know, I used to have a community where they'd say, oh, we need 50,000 for a splash pad. But you know, or something like that, and the people would say, oh, we'll give them 10 now, 10 now, you know, if the more money you hold, HUD has this timeless criteria, 1.5